It is day 10. I can hardly believe it. I have no idea where the day has gone. I feel like I just looked up and all of a sudden it was 3 o'clock on Friday. And nobody else is in the office anymore. I don't even know when people left. I've been in a little bit of a hole. Day 10. We're almost to the end of this 12-day writing challenge, which there were a couple of things that inspired me to do this. One was my husband saying, hey, you have like 2 weeks before we have some company coming. Why don't you spend time working on your book? So that was very explicit. The other is there's a woman whom I support on, I think it's pronounced Patreon. Patreon. Her name is Fran, and she's an illustrator who lives in the UK. And she did a month-long illustration challenge for herself, where every day she did a different illustration, and it was related to some kind of theme. So this last year she did animals, and people actually submitted animals doing different things, and then she would draw one a day throughout, I guess, January. She called it Franuary. Anyway, I thought it was a really cool creative challenge, and I wanted to know what I could do for myself in capacity of writing. And then I did have this window that my husband pointed out that I could use to work on my book. So it's been really exciting for me. It feels really good. It's also a reminder of how far I still have to go. Oh my gosh, you guys, I started this project. I started it in 2012 or 13, and I started it seriously in 2015. So I was sort of working on it and trickling around on it, trickling along, and then put in an entire year's worth of pretty consistent effort, and then fell off a little bit. I'm getting back to it now. So that is the saga, though, of working on creative projects. They have their own timeline to some extent. Today, I want to talk about trust. Trusting the process, which is related to this long, extemporaneous timeline. 90% of the time that I spend writing, I feel like a horrible writer. And 10% of the time, I feel okay. And maybe it's 9% of the time I feel okay, and then 1% of the time I really surprise myself. That is to say, and I am not the first writer who's ever said that. A lot of writers in particular and I know this just because I follow writers and other creatives, but writers in particular will talk about how they feel like they're horrible at writing. Like, why am I doing this? I don't even know what story wants to come through. I don't know how to craft this. And I told you the other day that I'm really obsessed with Hamilton right now. So I've been reading the Hamilton, the Revolution book, and it is an entire glimpse into the creative journey that was the 7-year creation of Hamilton, the musical, and then the continued creation kind of throughout its production and thereafter. And whether it's a musical or whether it's a book or whether it's a movie script or whether it's a dissertation or whether it's a speech you're giving, my experience of creativity is that sometimes it flows and it's perfect and you're done in one go. That is the very, very rare small percentage of the time. The rest of the time, it is laborsome, it is slogging, it is writing a lot of stuff that's not going to end up in my book. It's writing one scene numerous times, and maybe at the end it might not end up in my book after all of that, or it's not until a later version that it will end up in my book. It's feeling like I've done a great job. I'm so proud of my manuscript. I submit it to my editor. She gets back to me. She says, great job. And then the rest of the 2 hours is all notes, and my judgment can sneak in, and I feel like a shitty writer. This is how it goes as far as I've experienced it. And I don't think it's something that has to feel like a conflict all the time. It doesn't have to feel like a battle. It's not fighting against creativity. It's just messy. It's just like life. In this 12-day challenge, I have found that over the couple of years I've been working on this book, some things have changed for me. One is learning to trust the process. Yesterday, I was having a really hard day with my book. I was at that point of feeling like I'm a horrible writer. What am I doing here? Nobody's going to read this. Why does anybody want to read a story about my life? Why am I even writing a story about my life? And I was telling my husband this morning that at least one thing that I've learned is to not trust those thoughts. That they're going to arise and they're going to be part of it. And instead of believing them and retracting, I need to learn to lean into them And that's what I told myself yesterday. Oh, this is interesting. These are some interesting things that you're thinking. Why don't you lean into this a little bit more? Because what I have found is that when there is that moment of chaos and confusion and doubt, it usually precedes a moment of extreme clarity, of feeling like you have a leap forward in your creativity, of having some kind of revelation or solution to a problem you've been working on. And that's just how it goes as far as I've experienced it. And so there's a level of trusting the creative process. And in this book, Hamilton the Revolution, Lynn talks about a lot of times when he wasn't exactly sure what he was doing, a lot of songs he wrote that didn't end up in there. There are a lot of books that he read studying history, and a lot of the information didn't end up in there, even though he wanted it to be. So it takes a lot to start with a large pool that is your story, that is your imagination, that is your life, and then start winnowing it down into the finely, carefully crafted creation that it is. And the thing about memoir is sometimes I even thought beforehand that, oh, that's just kind of easy. It's what you lived. You're just going to write about what you lived, tell the stories that you've experienced, and then you're done. And the challenge that I've set for myself, that I think all good memoirists do also, is the challenge of crafting a story. This could be another discussion. It's another topic that I really love talking about, and we could go on forever. But in short, to tell a story, okay, so there are multiple truths in life. In fact, there might be no such thing as the truth. There is only your experience. And then even within your experience, say the example of my memoir, my story, there are multiple stories. There are multiple truths. There are also multiple perspectives, but I'm only going to tell it from my perspective. But even in that, to get across one point, I think it's more powerful to tell one story than to tell all the stories, if that makes sense. So one thing that author Dana Shapiro told me at a workshop that we did was, sometimes your audience can't handle the amount of tragedy that you actually lived through, but that they're going to shut down emotionally to it. And there's a way of crafting your story that is truthful, but that allows you to access people's hearts, people's emotions, leads to transformation, leads to connection. Anyway, this is getting a little bit more into the craft, and I didn't really mean to go there. But that's a long, arduous process, and it's a lot of confusion. It's a lot of feeling like a crappy writer. It's a lot of writing stuff that's not going to go in the book. And I just like to encourage you to trust the creative process, because somehow, some way, I don't know how, it knows where it's going. And when things get tough and when judgments start to pile on, either take a break. It's good to take a break, make them plentiful, and also learn to lean into it, because I think that it truly is the chaos that happens before. Oh, I just had a phone call coming in. It is the chaos that happens before some of the calm and some of the resolution. That is Writing Challenge Day 10. That was really helpful for me today and yesterday, as I felt in the throes of emotions and judgment and irrational thought. I hope that's helpful for you. Let it all be a part of the process. It is the creative process, and included in the creative process is not just your creation, it's your experience throughout your creation. So let it be human, because there's nothing else we can be. So we might as well embrace our messy, flawed humanness. All right, you beautiful humans, 2 more days left. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.